We're talking about Black, Indigenous, and people of color entrepreneurs, right? It's a huge segment of the population here in Canada. And myself, Gemma Gray Hall, as the acting president of the International Association of BIPOC Lightmakers, I'm really proud to be here today, especially with our co-founder of the organization, Donna Stoney. We're thrilled to also have with us in our panel today, Mintel, who is the director of this amazing building that we're in here at Abbey. So thanks for helping us. We also have Rakesh Naidu, who is CEO and president of the Essex Regional Chamber of Commerce, and of course, Lori Tanous. And Lori, we're also thrilled, of course, to have you here as an expert in global businesses and legal affairs, and of course, an inspiration speaker. So one of the things I just want to get into is like why we're here today specifically, and for the International Association of BIPOC Winemakers, because you're the first official international association specifically directed towards BIPOC winemakers. And as I mentioned before, you've got going on after having a chance meeting with, if you believe it, the one other Black winemaker here in Canada, Steve Byfield. And it's like, how can we continue to make sure that there's amazing support for people that want to step out and start their own businesses? And like, look at some stats specifically when it comes to winemaking. There are less than 1% of the wine industry professionals are BIPOC, Black, Indigenous, and people of color. Surprising. When they looked at a 219 survey by 750, an organization that chatted with 3,100 wine industry professionals, only 2% of them identified as Black. And like, let's look at the market, right? The global wine market, because I did a little bit of research here, right? US dollars, $489 billion. And here's the interesting part. They're planning a growth chart to $825 billion by 2030, which is only, 7 years away. Let's just process that.
Can you say that? Sorry, can you say the number again?
825 billion by 2030.
Almost doubling it.
Thank you. Exactly. But really, like when you
I said almost, so I have some.
This amazing growing market and the percentage of Black businesses that we have and BIPOC businesses that we have, it's still an only really small part of the pie. We need to work together to make sure that we're coming up with solutions to kind of tackle some of these challenges. So our plan today is to talk about why we're kind of in this situation, what kind of solutions are out there. Well, let's be creative. Well, let's be an open forum for discussion and coming up with some good, cool ideas. So let's go around. You're in staff. Tell us a little bit about yourself and how you know about it.
Okay, well, wonderful introduction. Learning so much, even though I think I know a little bit about the industry now, I'm learning even more. So, Lori Tanous, I am originally from Leamington, Ontario. So it's about 45 minutes south from here to this big wine region in Colchester and Harrow. So whoever hasn't gotten a chance to go out there and visit. I went to the University of Windsor, completed my law school here, while I was the Customs and Immigration Officer at the CDSA, so for the Canada Border Services Agency. I did that at the same time. I do a lot of different things. I wear a few different hats. I am a special advisor on all cross-border issues here at the Cross-Border Institute. I am the Vice President of Government Relations at Faro, which is Canada's largest independent customs broker. And then I have my own consulting firm in the United States that only consults on issues of border security and human trafficking. And then I have my own immigration law firm. So I don't sleep, for those that might. So, and the key asked the last week, how did we get?
Yeah, I mean, like, I want everyone to take an opportunity to tell me on it, you know. And
Okay, but it was not a question.
Can someone else go after her?
No. We're friends. Go on.
So I'm Rakesh Naidu. I'm the President and CEO of the Windsor Essex Regional Chamber of Commerce. I'm a chemical engineer that fell out of engineering and landed in economic development. But it's been a journey that I've thoroughly enjoyed. I did my engineering and I worked for multinational companies in India. And I came here to work for General Motors and crossed the river. And I came just a few days before September 11th happened. So though I was invited to join GM by none other than Jack Smith, who was the chair at that time, it was life-changing experience for many people, 9/11. And the result was that I ended up doing things which I had not planned to when I came to Canada, and I ended up then joining the industry, the supply chain, and one thing led to another. And I ended up coming to Windsor because my wife, she is a physician from India. She came for residency again, and I was in US, so we thought Windsor is a good place. She can travel back and forth. So we thought it would be good only 2-3 years of our stay here. And then that was way back in 2004. I'm still here. Enjoy every moment of our stay here. Blessed to have great friends and families here. My children have grown up here, and Windsor Essence is followed. So, in my role as the Chamber of Commerce President, I get to really dive into many different industries across sector, the very sector agnostic. But we take up issues that are very specific to this region. Want to make a difference by advocating on behalf of businesses, especially those businesses that don't have a voice, small-sized and medium-sized businesses. So we work on their behalf. We call ourselves Voice of Business. And the organization that I proudly represent is going to celebrate 150 years in 2025. So it's been around for a long time. It's done great service to this region. And I'm really humbled to be part of the team there and making small business. As part of that, the wine industry is one of our industries that we take very seriously. And it's an industry that has huge potential. But it also has some barriers, some challenges that we have to work on and advocate on. So that those barriers can be lifted and the industry can do much better than what we're doing now. That is one of the reasons why I got interested in the winery industry, though I don't drink at all. But it is one of the first files that I took on it. People increase that I don't really, you're interested in that. But it's been something which I've learned a lot about the industry and the potential. And hopefully with Donna's insight in terms of what you're doing in Oregon, you've got a huge number of wineries there. We could probably learn something from you and hope to grow this region and grow the wineries in this region.
Well, that is a go. That is a go. Hi, my name is Donna Stoney. I'm actually from Corpus Christi, Texas. I grew up in Texas, not in Oregon, and it's not Oregon. I've been in social work for about 44 years. One of my 44 years, and yes, I'm old. It just doesn't show it. I guess I got my mom's DNA. But I've done so much, worked a lot with kids, youth, in terms of running briefing homes and different things like that. The biggest thing that I have right now is I work for people with intellectual development disability. I have 7 homes now, 42 employees. I retired from Oklahoma County, which is part of the Portland area. I decided when I retired about 8 years ago with my sister back there, because we do everything together. She didn't want to talk, but decided that it was time to do the second chapter of my life, which was going after my wine career. So I taught myself, went to school, and decided it was time to, start my career. So I'm doing both now. So I'm working as a CEO and working as a winemaker. So I just kind of keep myself busy. I so want to change so many things right now. I think it's just been very difficult, but I think you have to get the right people, because that's why we started. And so we get the right people on the board that can understand our mission and values. And I believe that at that point, we can make things happen. I'm Billy Stoney. I have 2 kids. That's my daughter back there. Dottie, she's like my right hand, left hand, all around. And my sister there, Val, is also. Without those 2, I don't know what I would do. So
That's great. So my name is Gwen Teal. I'm the director and co-founder of Epicenter. So Epicenter has been around for 9 years. We are celebrating 10th next year. So we're very proud of having the center. And personally, I actually went to University of Toledo for my bachelor's degree. I'm originally from Malaysia. So my husband and I was studying at University of Toledo, and I worked there for 9 years. Then we moved back home and we started the business together.
And then we moved to Canada. I think we moved to Canada in 2011, I would say. And at the time, it was, again, economic crisis time. So we stayed with my sister in Toronto. So my sister's there. It was difficult for me to find a job, for both of us to find a job, because no one's hiring. And one thing that, I heard a lot was that you need Canadian experience. Well, nobody wanted to give you Canadian experience. And I thought having, years of experience as entrepreneur, business owner, and also American experience, which should be very similar to Canada, but I guess it didn't really make it didn't help much at all. And then similar to like Rakesh's situation, my husband's employer from Toledo say, why don't you come back and work for me? And the closest that we can get to without living in the States for him to cross was Victor. That's why we came here, and and we, I guess we call it home here. Then I went back to school, so I got my MBA from University of Windsor. And subsequently, I found a job here, and one thing led to another. I was very fortunate to be a part of the core team that started Epicenter. So here I am, and I think I'm staying here. Yeah.
Wonderful. Thank you. So, let's get into the conversation a little bit. And I mentioned earlier some of the statistics that we're currently saying about BIPOC entrepreneurship in Canada and U.S. And there's less than 1% on BIPOC winemakers globally. So there's a huge issue when it comes to, just the ecosystem that entrepreneurs have to fall back on. And like I said, we want to talk a little bit today about what might be and what solutions are there. So first question, we'll touch on what available resources are out there. And hopefully this might spark and inspire some of you to get more involved. So let's go into our first question, shall we? So what are some of the key reasons you think that there's a lack of representation in the entrepreneurial ecosystem? And what challenges do you see people are coming up against? Too much one. I'm throwing it at. This isn't directed to anyone. It's like a lead in and you answer if you'd like to.
I think a lot of it is, I don't know, I talk to people about this all the time, is finding money. Especially for people that are BIPOC, getting out there trying to find that money, but sticking to that plan. And I feel like you're just continuing to fight against, I always have to watch what I say. I don't want to make anybody feel uncomfortable, but just because I've been in that challenging, I was the first Black caseworker out of but 10,000 people in the count. And I had to fight all those barriers as well. I'm the first Black winemaker in Oregon. And it's all about the fact that I hear all the time is that people struggle because of the money. And if we can figure that out, I just happened to put a repeat that I had when I was working for the county, and said because I already knew what I wanted to do. I wanted to become a winemaker at some point, so I knew I had to put the money back. I did it. I'm just fortunate to do. I was very lucky, and so that's really what it is in a nutshell. How do we find that money? That's what we do.
Rakesh, absolutely. With your background in economic development.
So I agree that accessing funds is not easy. But I think there is a slightly different issue with it. It's not just accessing funds, it's actually being the lack of awareness of what exists. So the Chamber offers several networking sessions. We have after businesses, we have big up interests, we have roundtables, and a lot gets discussed during those meetings. There's people there, elected officials, but I find that the representation of BIPOC entrepreneurs those meetings is very sparse. And I don't know why, because the Chamber does take a lot of steps to reach out to them, but it is I don't know why, but there is not as much engagement as should be. There's in Canada about 388 grants programs that is meant specifically for BIPOC entrepreneurs. Very few of them actually know about that. right? So one is having enough awareness about what exists, what cracks are there, and there are agencies that, scientists that have a look, when's agency here, right? I mean, they offer some amazing programming. So does the chamber, so does the investment analytics, and there are others like, we've got ETech Alliance and others. But how many of these programs and services are really being tapped by people that should, right? I mean, so there's a huge gap between what is available and what is the awareness about what is available. And I think that needs to be bridged. And there has been multiple ways in doing that. We need to also create an environment where people, especially from marginalized communities, feel comforted. It's not only daunting for them to come into an environment like this, to sit in round tables and to talk about here's my need. Many people feel that, if I have to do something, I better figure it out myself. But there are other places and avenues and resources that others are tapping that entrepreneurs are developing. So I think there is a significant gap in terms of knowing what is there and tapping.
So I hear you saying that, but it's like there's still that challenge, because I know that if you just give you recommendations, I'm going to end up in that. So, but it's like I would have known that, and why maybe and why here, 7.5 years, and I'm studying it way before that. How did I not know that?
I think we're going to let you for sure, because I think, with your role specific QueenCon and working with entrepreneurs within the community, please.
Sure. I think, like Rakesh said, the lack of awareness, right? I mean, we really have to go out there because, instead of them coming to us, because, if you are a community member, right? You have an idea, you want to start a business. The first thing you're going to do is you're going to go Google, right? And you type up your question, and then you see so many different options. We have, MP Center, we have BIPOC Alliance, we have Small Business Entrepreneurship Center. Which one should I go? And if for someone who's not familiar, it's really challenging for them to sort out. And they are just going to call it one by one if they have the time to do that. So I think we have been working together very, very closely, like, MP Center, Small Business Center, and BIPOC Alliance. We try to have that one-stop solution where it's easier for community members who want to start a business that they can just see it, and we approach them, and then we can just provide them with information, I think. But it is really challenging, like we are all funded by government, right? So the lack of resources sometimes is a big issue. We don't have people to really go out there, but the lack of awareness is really something that we need to overcome. Like, get out there, we need to be speaking to them at their place, right? Not for them to come to it, because it's very challenging. You need someone that has no, is not part of the network. How do they know, who to talk to? Think, for example, my neighbor came and asked, I have this business idea I wanted to start, right? So I asked him, what do you know of Small Business Center that can help, with consult, like mentorship? No, I've never heard of it. So when we all work in this network, we know what we do, right? And we know we have a lot of resources to help, but people who are not part of the circle, very hard for them to know, and they don't know where to look. Yeah, so we are trying very, very hard to really get out there so that community members know our resources, that we can help them.
As we touched on, a really good point, talked about like partnerships and like that hesitation. So one might feel as like an entrepreneur, well, where am I going to find information? And this is where I think that like international partnerships can be so incredibly helpful. Lori, your insight as well, like you mentioned cross-border management and security and legal. Can you just talk about like how, in your experience, do you think entrepreneurs can help with forging alliances with international partners, how to foster the growth that they have? I mean, that's an untapped for me.
Yeah, it's definitely something I deal with on a weekly basis, and I think I would agree with what everybody said. And I was talking to Donna earlier about, a client of mine who was trying to buy into a winery in Michigan, and he was struggling. And one of his struggles was from a legacy perspective. So the winery owner didn't want to part with his vineyard because it had been in his family for so many years, and there was this emotional attachment to it. And I was trying to explain to my client, maybe you need to meet them where they're at in the negotiations and have an understanding of where they're at, right? I think that some of the other problems that I see at least are, I was in Edmonton last week. I had to speak at an event, and I came off stage, and a woman came up to me and she said, "Thank you." And I said, "Welcome." I didn't know why she was saying thank you. So she said, "It's like I saw myself up there." And I said, "Pardon me?" And so she said, "Well, you can really." And she was a lawyer. She was Asian, was younger. And so she said, "Everything you're saying is like I've been in your shoes, or I'm going to walk in your shoes." And I think, and one of the problems that I find is that there is a lack of connection, right? So whether it's cross-border, whether it's BIPOC, non-BIPOC, it's how do we connect with other people on the other side of that table or on the other side of that business, or, trying to engage them, right? I think it's trying to make sure that we're relatable and that they can say, "Okay, I know where you're coming from," or "Yes, I understand what you're saying," and try to make those pathways a little bit easier.
And I really hear what you're saying about the connection, like not just necessarily within the BIPOC field, but like trying to build those, and just how incredibly important that network can be. Rakesh, Donna, want to weigh in on the thoughts of that?
Yeah, absolutely. One of the key activities of the chamber is to provide those dimensions. So the chamber is made up of members that work from time to time and identify opportunities within the network and outside as well. So cross-border networking is also super important for us. We work very closely with the Detroit Chamber of Commerce. So I try to overstate the importance of using the network. And BIPOC entrepreneurs, they can have their own network, but they can also remove a network that exists. There's no reason why they should not, or they cannot, or they should not benefit as much as the others do. I think where I see some lack is one is I need to go back to that awareness, because when we reach out to people that want to have networking sessions, we find very few BIPOC entrepreneurs together, right? Those who are there, they do not have the idea of who else they should be bringing with, because we give them the option of, why don't you bring someone with you, a fellow entrepreneur or someone that your business associate or supply chain partner and so on. And often that opportunity to bring someone from the BIPOC community, if I can call it that, is often labeled. They don't bring someone, right? So I think there is sometimes that they are not really fully taking advantage of the opportunity. And it can be multiple reasons. It could be because they are small. They have many hats to wear. It's not easy to be everywhere. There could be challenges with, I've done this in the past, it doesn't work. I've got bigger fish to fry. There's so many different reasons. But I think the opportunity to leverage the network is lost. And those that are there, they make some valuable connections. Their businesses grow. We've seen it happen. And I often, wonder why this is going to be before, why those then really needed. So I cannot overstate the importance of networking and collaboration and really putting oneself out there. Right? It is super important, even, to come for those roundtables and express one's opinion. We talked about the challenges. Sometimes, people feel that, by bringing up those challenges, we're kind of exposing a little bit of weakness that we may have, and that we need to really figure this out ourselves and find a resolution ourselves, rather than needing up someone or tapping the resources out there. And that would be potentially an issue as well.
I mean, you touched on a really great point regarding like that hesitation. I'm not able of reaching out, making themselves humble, right? You step in and try and start a business. I mean, Donna, I know you mentioned earlier, this is kind of like the reasons why you decided to co-found with International Association. Share a little bit more about some of those challenges and how you've overcome, that feeling of not feeling like you need to be in the room when you're asked at least supposed to be.
I think there's still challenges, and I think starting is, I think you'll continue to have challenges. It's just how you take it in, and I understand pulling from other people. Like in Oregon, I talked to my daughter about this on tour. We have a boy, which is Hispanic, BIPOC. They have their, then we have, folks over here that have their, it's like popping, it's indigenous, and then you have the black over here. But none of us are working together. And so we was at a BIPOC event, and I saw all these people here, and I was going,
we're here in Oregon, we're something united. Why aren't we connecting together? And then we started talking about that. And then the president of the BIPOC event that we were at, that's the one thing I said. I told her, I said, I want to pick your brains. And she said, oh, no, what do you think? I said, nothing. How did I not know about you? And you've been doing this event for 2 years, and it's getting bigger, which is really good. But why? I told her that, well, we were trying to get the International Association of BIPOC winemakers. I told her, why are we not connecting together? What do I need to get on with more here in Oregon in order to, have people understand what I'm trying to do? And she, said, yeah, she said, you just got to get in there. You got to get, and you're right, you just have to be, I know I talk, but I'm not a very aggressive person. I'm not a salesperson either. I'm just going to be quite frank with you because I'm not. But I'm so passionate right now that it just keep giving me energy. And when I probably see things like this and hear you talking and see the BIPOC event, it makes me want to challenge people even more. And I think that it's going to continue to challenge just because there's people that don't even want to deal with me because I'm Black. And in Oregon, honestly, I mean, it's a white world. You don't see very many BIPOC, even if they do, like I said, they're in their own pods. And my thing is that we need to stop that. And I'm getting some good ideas. I'm so glad y'all came. I'm glad we had this because it's giving me some good ideas to take back to the BIPOC person. She still got it back. And the president talked to her and said, look, I just came back from this place here. Why are we all working? Why are we running from each other? We're not in competition. We're trying to come to the same goal to get us all out there to work together so we can beat this $8 billion. You said that thing. That's where we. And that's where we all really right. So, and so when with the role that Epicenter fills here specifically, and Donna's points and Rakesh's points about community engagement and reaching out to your partners, like Lori mentioned, how can they use that engagement to continue to bridge gaps and just raise awareness?
Great. So we recognizing that networking is an important skill, whether you are students looking for a job or entrepreneurs trying to expand your business. We started a networking event called Connect 4. So every 6 to 8 weeks, we have a networking event that focus on specific topic. So the idea is to get students that we have a large population of international students, and we know you walk out there, we see a lot of international students tend to mingle with their own network. I mean, I was like that when I first attended University of Toledo. You tend to hang out with your own group. So you lack that opportunity to really expand your network and meet other people. So we started this series, the networking series, so that they can come and they can meet people from outside of their network, whether their own cultural network or their classmates from the same courses, right? And it has been very successful. Just shameless plug, we have another one coming up in 2 days. So it's called Startup Mixer. So the idea is to get local entrepreneurs, small business owners to promote what they do and have engaging activities, and students and community members can come and learn more about entrepreneurship and meet some of the local small business owners that we have here. So we see that as a very successful way to get students out of their comfort zone, learn how to network. We actually have one that is about how to network at a networking event. So we know students need that, right? They need that skill. So this is a great way for them to be, and we have community members attending as well. So they get to meet maybe future employers or someone that they can volunteer with, and that is a very great way to get out of comfort zone. Yeah.
Thank you. So networking, connection, partnerships, community. Let's get down in a little bit more into some more specifics, because Lori, we're going to ask you, with your experts to use specifically in legal considerations. So how do you think BIPOC entrepreneurs can work through navigating some of the laws, insights, if you will, on strategies to helping build not just necessarily the community, but those next steps about international partnerships, and how that can be helped?
So I find that it's a lot of what the bar you talked about, right? So in order to figure out how to grow your business, to expand your business, to say, okay, now I want to export out of the U.S. into Canada, or export out of Canada into the U.S. and to other markets, networking is critical, because that's where you meet people like Rakesh, like Gwen, like Donna, or like myself, where you can say, okay, what is it that I need? For wineries, at least here, one of their first questions, how do I export out of the region, right? Because they know they've got a customer base outside. And so that's where the Chamber of Commerce comes in. It comes into play, right? And understanding. There's a wealth of knowledge online as well. However, I think that being able to understand what it is that you need to do. You need to know from a customs perspective, right? So what are the customs laws, the import-export laws that pertain to my industry? When we're talking about wine specifically, it adds another layer of complexity, because it's not just, oh, I'm importing and exporting this wine. You now have health, FDA regulations in the U.S. In Canada, you have Canadian Food Inspection Agency regulations. So you've got to know what it is that you need to know. And how do you know that? You meet partners who are in the field, experts, right? Because otherwise what happens is I find a lot of times people will come to me and they try to do it themselves, or they try to work with somebody who does it from the corner of their desk, and they don't have an expertise in exporting wine out of one country and importing it into another. Legal and requirements. There's a whole slew of things. But if you find the right resources, it can be seamless, it can be compliant, and it can be a good moneymaker. And so I think that just being able to do your research and understand, but at the same time, finding the right people who can assist you. And that's where the networking that Van and Rakesh are talking about, because that's where they meet people who say, oh, actually, I may not be the expert, but I know somebody who is, right? And so I think it starts from that. You really have to get out of your offices, get away from your computers and meet people, so that you can be able to have those human connections to be able to say, I trust you. I trust that you're going to be able to take my wine, you're going to be able to take it to another level. I think that's really important. You need that trust. In summary, I know, Rory, you touched a little bit about Rakesh and your work specifically at the Chamber of Commerce. Can you elaborate and share with the group about what other services the Chamber offers to help with it?
Yeah, so one of the things that you talked about is exports. So we do provide certifications, like your Orient certification, that's very useful for exports, and networking, advocacy, events. If there are issues that are barriers, is red tape that's affecting your businesses, so we come and look into that and look at what regulations are currently in place or what needs to change. We think of a resolution on that and follow the whole process of getting into, identified into what changes needs to be made, get it passed through the Ontario Chamber of Commerce, the Canadian Chamber of Commerce, and then present to be relevant government. So the whole process. So we call ourselves the voice of business, because a lot of businesses can't make those changes just by themselves. A lot of small and medium businesses don't have the resources to make the changes. But it may be that issue may be affecting their business, maybe creating barriers, there may be red tape that is really affecting their business. That's where the chamber comes in, and that's what we do. We really take your issue, identify what should change, and then work to the system to bring the changes happen. Work very closely with all levels of government. Whether it is, parking that needs, to be extended in terms of hours, or whether it is, the CIT, which is a local thing, to provincial issues, to federal issues. We identified many that businesses can benefit from, and then we are engaged on behalf of business.
So let's take some questions. Thank you.
So we know that where we sit in here in Canada and Detroit is a very unique corridor, right? And Don Clough is preaching to the choir about not of their interest. The most mountain trade in North America goes right here across this bridge, right? So knowing what I'm looking to Lori and to Rakesh on this, knowing what you know about some of the barriers, some of the challenges, if you had a wish granted, what is the main, each of you choose, don't make it the same one, you choose different ones. What is the main barrier that we need to be working on to help BIPOC winemakers? We've got one Black winemaker in Canada. Okay, so we don't have BIPOC representation in winemaking in Canada. They have some indigenous, right? I think some Wastani, but I mean, it's very, very, very small. So what is the one thing that if you're like, okay, if we were going to tackle this and this would be a barrier that we could actually lessen or remove, what are each of you choosing to go after?
Only one.
It's our last one. February 3, our stakes, whatever. You can start. Well, okay, so I think the problem is that there's two issues in my net, so I'm going to start with the people issue, right? So unfortunately, BIPOC, myself included, sometimes are afraid to cross the border because we are profiled sometimes, right? And so when I talk to clients who say, oh, I just got harassed at the border, or I don't know what I'm going to expect when I'm crossing borders, from a people perspective, they have to understand what those challenges are like, right? How to deal with it, because we can't be defensive. We can't say, why are you doing this to me? Because that's not going to help. But there's a way to answer questions. There's a way to address border officers on either side of the country that I think help alleviate some of the fear and the anxiety that some of my clients have in that space. So I think better education and information to the BIPOC community on how to cross the border. Because trust me, I've tried to change it from the other way and that's not working. So that would be one of my wish lists. But then on the other side of that is to have greater awareness of the available markets, right? So I don't think that there is enough exposure of the fact that there is this wonderful winemaker from Oregon who could supply her winery in Canada, or our wineries that are here would supply their winery, to the US. Plus, we have all these free trade agreements between Canada and Europe. So somebody like Donna could take advantage of having her opening up a winery here, okay, or a division of her winery here, and then shipping all of that to Korea, to South Korea, to Europe, to all of these places that we have free trade agreements with. So I think that there's just like a lack of information out there. And if we could fix that, I think that we could actually find more opportunities to challenges. Okay, I'm gonna stop.
You are now on the board.
Yeah. That is really good. No, really.
No, that's fantastic. I'll also add two issues, which is not necessarily to do with international, exports. It's also got to do with how we are supporting our winemakers here locally, for them to prosper regionally, but also provincially and federally. We have in Ontario an import duty, a tax which is very inappropriately levied on winemakers that are in Ontario. So let's say we have a winery in the 6 region, and they grow all their grapes at the vineyard here locally. They pick them and then they process them into full wine here in the 6 region. Once it is bottled and is ready to be sold, they will be levied the 35% import duty. There is nothing imported for process, right? 35% import duty. On top of that, there is 6.1% sales tax. On top of that, there is a 13% HSE. And so if you put all of that, the cost for producing a wine which is local, not imported, is significant, and it creates a huge disadvantage for winemakers here, and doesn't allow them to compete with the imported wine, wines that come from other regions which are cheaper. It's obviously better but cheaper. So if we remove this barrier, we will create more successful winemakers. We will then have more BIPOC winemakers, because we will see that it is business that is a business where you can be successful. If you have a business where, generally speaking, most people are struggling, BIPOC winemakers may get even more conservative into getting into that field. So I think we need to create an environment where everyone can become more successful, and that gives more strength and confidence to the BIPOC winemakers as well. So that's why. The second thing is that, we have all these interprovincial and trade barriers even today, right? So wines from here cannot be exported to Quebec and vice versa and so on. Sometimes it may be easier for them to ship it across the US. But then the whole thing about, exports, why you get exports, so the paperwork and all of that, this is something, the lack of information, or, how, it becomes so overwhelming for that Mexico have to ship this across the border. People just don't really, look into it. But before we get into exporting to a different country, if we can make it easier for them to export to a neighboring province, that will open up a huge market, that will make them more successful, and that will create, that whole environment where others would be interested in being part of that and be part of businesses.
I was just thinking when you were saying that, I know when I went to the International Summit in California, they talked a lot about, it's not export, but it's nothing against distributors, but it's like, for me, I'm looking at a distributor now because I'm trying to move my wine. But do you know how much money I do?
Right up on top.
Right
off the top.
And then a couple of people that I met there, they had like 7,000 cases. And man, I'm spending 1,000 cases. Really? How do you do that? Well, I have a distributor. But they take all your money. And then I talked to somebody else. Yeah, I have a distributor. You should get a distributor. I said, oh, I want to make the money. I'm making it wine. Why do I want to give my money to the distributor? But now that's where I'm forced because I want to make a little bit of money so that I can go on and do what I need to do to, build that production to make it better. But I want to be my own person. But I also found out even through the McBride sisters, who are very, I don't know if any of you know them, but they're really huge in the United States. They had started out with a distributor, and now they got stuck with this distributor. Even though they want to move on and do their own thing, they can't because they started with this distributor, and now they got to continue no matter what. And so that scares me too. So again, it's that lack of, and I remember Andrea, I think that's what I remember her saying to me, she said, yes, go get a distributor, but be very careful. Make sure that an attorney is looking at read the fine print. Yes, and that you didn't get out of it because that's going to be your issue. She said, we are stuck. We can't even do anything now. Even though we're selling our wine everywhere else, this particular distributor is taking our money.
And like in that network, sorry, just to jump in with another question, you touched on something that's really important. In the network that we're building, are we talking about which distributor is the best? As a business that's just starting out or thinking about doing wine, okay, these ones are open or more, talk them like more thoughts and a little bit about where do we get that information?
It's really talking to restaurants and talking to other wineries. So restaurants have the knowledge of which distributors they buy from. So if you go to a restaurant, you see all the wines that they have there, and you say, "Who's distributor?" Well, it's like that market research. I'll drink for you, Rakesh. Don't worry. I didn't want to know. Come on. But those restaurateurs, they have firsthand knowledge on which distributors, how much did they take off the top, and which wines they don't carry. And so I find a lot of my clients, I'll say, go talk to the restaurants that you would like to have their wine. Ask them, and they'll tell you, I deal with Cisco, or I deal with this one, or I deal with that one. And that's how you're going to, and then there's regional distributors, and then there's national distributors. So you have to be able to, is it a Gordon Food Service? Is it a Cisco? Is it a, Great Lakes Distribution? So you've got to know those three different tiers, right? But I think that's my take on it.
No, it's frustrating because you're exactly right. I went to that conference, and that was one of the things that they talked about was then Spain banned BIPOC winemakers. What they do is that they pick us out. This is what I heard, and there was a lot of people there. They pick us out. Okay, I want you over there. I'm gonna get your wine. But you know what I'm gonna do? I'm gonna get it. I'm gonna build you up, and then it's gonna sit in the back. And that's what I heard. I know my wine sitting in the back. I work hard, and this is my money, so I don't want that. And I was so surprised to hear that. And this was from one of the bottlers, that was talking about that and said, I want with my wine, and it's sat in the back. I went in there. It's sort of happening right now to me right now. Like I have a Riesling that's been winning a lot of awards. I can't keep it on the ship. So I went to one of my local restaurants, and I walked in and I says, well, where's my wine? Why didn't say that? We're just trying to figure out. I said, don't sell it. Why are you selling everybody else's bottles by the glass? You're doing mine by the bottle, and you're not promoting it. So what's going on? So I think those are kind of conversations that I really want to change after doing this because it's ridiculous. And don't throw our stuff in the back just because. And don't paint me because I'm black.
And so to Lori's point earlier about being able to read the fine print, and my first question is, well, when you think about those initial conversations with that restaurant, thinking about selling this particular your wine, was there a contract? Did they agree to sell it by the glass in the contract or by the bottle with price specified? Is there a holding time? Any additional expense? Sure.
Well, we did have a conversation, but the wrong thing that I didn't get him, right? And I should know that being a social worker, because she put everything in right. That lighting it didn't happen. And I had a conversation with said, so what are you gonna do? I would rather pull my wine, give me, buy it then, and go sell my wine to somebody else, because it's selling pretty good out here. Why is it not selling here? And this restaurant is pretty high class. I mean, it's packed all the time. I mean, we went just last week and we couldn't get in. It's packed all the time. I go in there because I know in there for a reason. I'm going to check and see what's for who. But I remember him telling me, which was, I kind of knew, we knew. I mean, they telling me, this is really he's a white guy. He said, this is really a white crowd. You have to be real careful. So then why you know what I'm doing? What's the purpose? Why? Oh, that's not okay. So don't set it that there, man.
So when you're an educator, and I have to ask, a lot of the gaps that we've identified today are directly related to educational opportunities and making sure there's awareness out there. So as an educator, how do you think BIPOC winemakers, the entrepreneurs, can provide mentorship or educational opportunities to kind of help, provide some more information for the that's thinking about getting into it? Please.
So I'm going to speak from small business or entrepreneurs in more general, because I don't really know much about wine. What is it? I like to drink wine. I cannot tell the difference between two different wines, so some of them good and good. So for us, our mission is to help students, right? And also, wherever they are from, and get them the right mentors to help them. As I mentioned earlier, we have a lot of international students that comes from the door. They're interested to start a business, have an idea, looking for mentorship. And we really need those mentors, advisors that can really understand the different cultural stuff. I think myself, as someone is an immigrant, even though, I may not identify with some of our different countries, but I share the same challenges the first time to Canada, and from the BIPOC community, start a business. So we try our best to get mentors that can identify with their challenges and really know the cultural differences, right, to help students. So I really want to encourage more mentors for BIPOC community to really pitch in and help students so that, they get the right advice, right mentorship, that they can, continue either to start a business or to work for somebody else. And we really need to help them get through all those challenges, and they can give back afterwards. So it's a cycle, right? So that's what we're trying here, and really do our best to pair with the right mentors and candidates.
Can I just ask clarify why? Please go ahead. Am I confused, British? So there's a 35 import fee on local produced wine that isn't actually imported.
Yeah.
That is, but it's not imported, but there's an import fee.
That's right. Yeah.
Okay, I'm just.
Well, that's.
Is anybody else confused by that? I'm a little confused.
Every time I bring this up, I have the same reaction. And when I found out the first time, I was shaking my head. How can we even have this conversation? Nobody's done anything about it, right?
How did it happen?
There's some history behind it. There's some WTO ruling and so on. So it's complicated. Needs 2 levels of government work, and then they have to go to the WTO international court to have that addressed. So it's a bigger issue. It's not an issue that cannot be resolved. I think it is about really prioritize that. And, there may be less amount of tax revenues going into the government. That may be perhaps one of the reasons why it is not being taken up. But it's absolutely unfair, unjust for local winemaker to pay 35%. And no other industry pays the retail sales tax at 6.1%, but the wine industry pays that. So 35% where you should be paying 6.1%, top of that it shouldn't be paying, here we are. So And on top of that, the 50%, right? So I'm sorry, 30% HST. You know, so
I can't even get back because nothing was imported. Right. It draws source locally.
So if you go to LCBO, you know, almost 85 to 88% of the wines that you see are imported. LCBO here in Ontario. If you go to other countries which are wine making, you will go to, you know, to Italy or France and South Africa, wherever else, you'll find that almost 90% of the wines are local. Only 10% is imported that they came. Right? We do the opposite here because we are really making it so difficult for our winemakers to compete. You know, the price point is way up because of all the taxes. And the net result is that only 10-12% of global wines are in the US.
Thank you for clarifying. I thought I misunderstood. I wish I did. So I've gotten this stalker. Is anything to the mirror?
I'm so winemakers in our turret. Have any more questions for the audience, please? Well, it's a give it a shot. I had to think about thank you everyone today for your candor and as always answering the questions. I guess like
Please, Sarah. No, I was just gonna say, Sarah, I'm just kind of absorbing everything. There is a lot. I think for BIPOC entrepreneurs, whether it's wine or any other industries, it looks like there's legal barriers, there's economic barriers, there's personal and interpersonal barriers, there's educational barriers. There's so many things. I guess what is your advice for those entrepreneurs that are really trying to like break down those barriers and start these initiatives like the International Association of BIPOC Winemakers that's trying to build that collaboration? What is your advice to those entrepreneurs on being kind of that only person in that space that's really breaking down those barriers, and how do they build that resiliency? Well, I'm a vice president of government relations at Faro. As I said, that company was around for 100 years, and they had never had a female vice president. And they interviewed me, and I was like, "Oh, I'm not getting this job." I did my research. I was like, "Oh, they've never had a female, let alone Lebanese female, right?" So I got some very good advice from my father at the time, and he said, "Don't sell yourself short, and have the confidence as if you're a guy that is white. Don't think that just because you're not what they had before, that's not what they need now, right?" And he said a bunch of other stuff, but for the sake of brevity, I'll just say that I think that we sell ourselves short sometimes, or we make assumptions that are not necessarily there. And just recently, I became the president of the Canada-U.S. Business Association, which is a cross-border association that brings businesses together. And again, being the first female president of that, I think that instead of looking at where our deficits are or that our challenges are, what I've tried to do, at least in my world, is to say, well, what value can I bring as a woman? What value can I bring as somebody that speaks Arabic or that is Lebanese or who's, first generation to this country, right? So I try and flip it on its head. So that's worked for me so far. So I would suggest that on to others.
Yeah, not selling much too short is extremely important, but I think with BIPOC entrepreneurs or any entrepreneur, I think it's super important to really focus on inner strength. This is something we can have all the abilities in the world, we can have all the technology, all great products in the world, but if we are as the individual, if we're not strong inside, we won't be able to take on the challenges that will come up. And the challenges will come irrespective of who you are. Whether you are Biden or whether you are this one person that's operating out from the basement, everyone has challenges in their life. The good times and the bad times both comes. But how do we really respond to that really sensitive processes? So focusing on inner strength is super important, more so for those that are marginalized because we have bigger barriers to overcome. It becomes even more important to find that strength that is on inside. So I think focusing on that, really ensuring that, look, if we have to break the glass ceiling, we have to be as hard or as strong as at all, right? And we have to really focus on not being off-center. We have to figure out a way in which we can find, that centeredness, even though the storm may be raging outside. How do we really go deep inside? Then everything that we do comes from that source, that is the self. That from that point, all discoveries have happened, all ingenuity, all innovations, everything comes from that point, from that source. Tapping that source becomes very important. And that's, people do it in different ways, whether that's through yoga or meditation. That works for me. Whether that's through running or music or painting or drawing, you have to find a way to tap that source. And that is super important. Business classes don't talk about that. We talk about, what we can learn from data analytics and from using technology, from AI and so on. But the IT that really is important is the inner transformation, which is super important to deal with things. So I would really focus on that. For us to really take on the world, we have to be first strong inside. And then I think it's important to really focus on intuition, which is something which we don't tap. But, if I can ask people around here, how many times we really take decisions based just on facts, on data? Very few times we do that. Most of the times we are taking decisions based on intuition. How do you really tap that intuition? That again goes back to attending to your source, to yourself. And I think that aspect of life, of really pulling deeper into oneself, learning more about oneself, and then coming from that space is often disregarded. We overlook that, and we really focus on the exterior nuances, which are not as important, but we focus a lot on that. We spend, our entire life, learning about things in universities and colleges, which is really makes it super important, but really tapping that source where most of these things originate, where all the creativity flourishes from, something that humans unravel.
Coming from an engineer, that's impressive. Okay, let's stay right down to your code.
There's no to be. I think it's just believing who you are, believing in your instinct. No. Barriers are just barriers. My favorite thing I always say to my dog, just straighten up that crown, because it's going to get crooked. It's got to get crooked. You straighten up that crown and you just keep going no matter what, because there are going to be things that's not going to go either way. They might not even like what you're saying, but you need to be able to be open-minded, listen to what you're going to, do to make things happen. It's just all about your instinct. Be persistent. That's the biggest thing. Somebody tell you that you can't do it, just spit in your head. Okay, but I'm doing. And I think that's what you got to do, just believe in yourself and you're at that state.
I will just have one thing to add on, right? Prove them wrong. You just have to do it. Yeah.
Wonderful. I mean, thanks for those amazing insights and tips at the candor. And so this is what I heard, right? As a BIPOC entrepreneur out there is, one, don't sell your social. Be sure to bring that value proposition. Focus on your inner strength, the IT, right? Not just, information technology for the tech people in the world, but inner transformation, right? And finally, believing in what is sounding most importantly, and just like not to quote Nike, but just do it. And we're excited. Thank you so much for all your time. Good night and all the time.
And then you can play on, wait to join you.